Hey, welcome to On the Chain. Today, we are going to be talking about Flare. We're going to get into some more of that commentary between Davidson and Chris Larson. And I don't know if you realize, but Europe is rolling out some new KYC rules as it pertains to crypto and the Biden Harris administration. What is this? They're looking at digital asset regulation. Maybe it's not just the executive order. Maybe there's something else going on. We're going to do a little update on what's going on with library. Might even get into the SEC. I know how you guys love the SEC. Hey, this is Jeff. You guys are here with me on the chain. So if you guys are ready to kick this thing off, I'm ready. Let us do it. Let's go.
Welcome to On the Chain.
All right, welcome back. It's great to see you guys on here. Looking forward to having this conversation. So, we have a lot to cover in a short amount of time to cover it in. Now, I want to go back about 6 days ago because we've talked about Flare for the past couple days. And so I want to get into Flare, Flare Network, Spark Token. There's been a lot of conversation over a period of time about Flare. What's going on with Flare? When are they dropping the Spark Token? Why did they say they were going to do an airdrop and then pull it back? And what happened when, they ended up dropping the Songbird? So very interesting, things going on. And so here you go. Flare, and is it going to be for real? Is this really going to happen? What's going to happen? Obviously, time will tell. July 4th apparently is the day. July 4th is D-Day for Flare. So they chose to do it on the 4th of July, which is crazy. But anyhow, so March 26th, Flare is built to be integrated with every chain. We don't attack the merits or dismerits of other consensus protocols. I think that's a big statement. Obviously, there's a little bit of brouhaha and dust up going on between Warren Davidson and Chris Larson and the community at large got all crazy amongst themselves, a little bit of turmoil. But at the end of the day, the dust settles and everything turns out much, much better. But anyhow, so Flare Network puts that out. And then obviously we're going to get some commentary from the people that are concerned. Well, what is going on with Flare? Is this going to be for real? When are you going to drop the roadmap? And again, this is 6 days ago, so we already know that the roadmap was dropped. We already know about July 4th, but this is important stuff here. So you've got Hugo responds to Quantity. Say, get on with it then. If you're going to talk about making all this stuff happen, well, when are you going to make it happen? So roadmap next week. We got the roadmap. And then here, can you please tell everyone when Spark will be distributed? Mainnet launch roadmap next week. So this is interesting, right? Now we have this idea that we're going to see some rapid movement, some rapid development with what? With Flare. So it's been interesting. It has been an interesting period of time, especially looking at Songbird and all of those things that have happened over the past. I don't even remember how many months it was. And yes, July 4th is still kind of a projected date, so not sure 100% if it's going to be July 4th, but July 4th will come. July 4th will go, and we'll see if that really transpires. But I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more. Otherwise, they wouldn't come out and start saying, "Hey, by the way, here's what's going on." And in part, I see that. So there was some more, commentary, and I want to get into this Warren Davidson, Chris Larson thing, and just seeing, some additional commentary that kind of dropped here. And, I'm finding, this is healthy. It's always healthy to have conversation, always healthy to have some discourse. And then what? Then we learn from each other, right? So one of the things, and Chip and I have covered this over the past number of videos, but I thought it was just there's just a little bit more, going on. And so one of the things, this goes back to something that Chris Larson had said, this op-ed calling for the restructuring of Bitcoin. And then you have those that are mining Bitcoin. They say, look, we don't need your involvement in restructuring. We kind of like it the way it is. And, then he said, well, if you're not going to do it if you're not going to do it, maybe it needs to be done through coercion. And so that's where this whole thing came down. And so the other day, Davidson was saying, if not in statute, then with coercion. If you don't see an attack on proof of work as an attack on Bitcoin, you understand neither. It's an attack on the fundamental architecture. Solana offers proof of history as a distinctive alternative. Numerous others offer proof of stake. So the point that Davidson is bringing up, and it's interesting that he's having this conversation with Chris Larson, he's actively been involved in the digital asset space for a while. Davidson is a little bit newer to the digital asset space, but serving in Congress. And so now they're having this conversation in the public square, which is Twitter, because Twitter is the public square. And so then he gets into, how integral is proof of work to Bitcoin. Well, it's in the abstract. And we talked about, how that's key. I thought it was interesting here because, Larson came back and he said, this is the exact opposite of what I'm advocating for. I hold Bitcoin. I want to be successful in the future. I'm being pragmatic about what's going on. When ETH completes the switch, Bitcoin is so here's a question. So now why are you going to bring up Ethereum? Because when is Ethereum going to make this switch? Are they going to complete it? Are they going to reduce their gas fees? Because their gas fees are outlandish on the Ethereum gas fees. So are they going to complete the switch? And is it relevant to full energy usage? And, then you get into the climate. So he gets into here, big institutions providing most of the liquidity have climate commitment. So now the big institution gets back to what Gary Gensler has been talking about with the SEC wanting to be focused and hold corporations, big institutions, he wants to put their feet to the fire on potential climate acknowledgement. So things are getting a little bit out of hand, a little crazy. And so this is one of the points I think that, Chris Larson is kind of slipping into that crazy, space when we're talking about liquidity. Okay, let's focus on liquidity. What about the climate commitment? Why are you getting in there? Gens is laser focused on climate. Now I don't know, Gen Z. I was thinking maybe he's got a nickname. I think Chris Larson might have a nickname for Gensler. He calls him Gens. Hey Gens, what's up, Gens? But I think he's referring to Gen Z because Gen Z is laser focused on climate. I believe that a long term of updating the code of either a low energy validation method or even code that incents miners to remove carbon. Now, how are you going to incentivize a miner to remove carbon? Now, a miner is mining. A miner doesn't necessarily know how to remove carbon from the atmosphere. And so this whole thing is just a little bit outlandish. I mean, you can have these ideas and throw it out there. But just just kind of goes on and on and on, So, and then obviously there was some commentary from the community, but I just thought it was just interesting looking at Chris Larson's comments here. And, I looked through it. I'm like, man, how is a miner going to remove carbon? That whole idea, but then, Gen Z really laser focused only on climate? Is that what's critical here to hold institutions, to you're going to get into you're having a financial conversation. So this is relevant, to the SEC, and what the SEC is doing because the SEC being extremely interrogative to, the corporations and just out of hand. It's just a little bit out of hand, That's it. All right. Next, what do we got here? Let me throw this comment up. So there are two comments back to back. So I want to go to some user commentary or some viewer commentary, not user commentary, but this one here is from RPM. XDC does all the above already way in front. And I like XDC. And I think, next video we need to get into, we'll talk more about FinCEN. We'll talk about XDC. I do like XDC. I do like, what the direction that, that group has been moving in. But he said, how come you ignore the World Trade Organization, blockchain, and DLT PDF? Well, the WTO, not a big fan of the WTO, but XDC, that's interesting. Then Chip says here, why would you want to bet me when I'm 100% convinced? Not 100%. I guess that's a different comment. Sorry. So anyhow, yeah, XDC is pretty, that whole project is really interesting. And I am still fired up about the direction that project is going in. And we'll have to get into it, I think, on the next video. And we'll talk in depth about XDC and what's going on with FinCEN. So I'm going to make a note of that. And, good point. Glad you brought it up. All right. So as we look at regulatory clarity, we just saw a conversation between a congressional representative and Chris Larson, and obviously, we get into SEC a lot because the SEC is kind of off the rails, and we have no idea what Gary Gensler is going to do next from his basement, other than talk about the pillars of enforcement. But we have to also then look at what's going on in Europe because, we see over in England, we see in Japan, we see in Portugal, we can go, country by country by country. But Europe in general, let's see what the EU is planning for cryptocurrency because it looks like Europe has some new KYC rules that are going to be coming after crypto. So let's see what that means. Coinbase, Gemini, and other companies denounced the EU's anti-money laundering requirements. So is Europe going to be overreaching and overzealous to protect their central banking infrastructure, trying to push back uh, and block the movement and the inevitability of cryptocurrency rising to the top? So here we have Europe's stringent new approach to crypto KYC is upsetting the blockchain world. What happened? The European Parliament has voted to require all crypto transactions to include information on the parties involved. Uh-oh, something's going on here. This is not good. So essentially outlawing anonymous crypto transactions. So if you're using anonymous crypto, then you better watch out in Europe. The new Know Your Customer rules, the new KYC rules, which would also cover transactions involving unhosted wallets, are aimed at curbing money laundering. So the overreach by the ignorance, the naivete of the EU once again reveals itself in black and white, right here in print, in their voting structure. It shows how controlling and control obsessed the EU ministers are with crushing your hopes, your dreams, and your financial freedom aspirations because they believe that centralized power and authority is much more important than your independent individual rights, especially when it comes to, guess what? Money. So now they want to limit money laundering in Europe, but a lot of the money laundering is done by some of the, let me think. Oh, yeah. Remember months and months ago, we talked about Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank was caught up in money laundering. Deutsche Bank laundered money for, some of the OPEC nations, and beyond that. So Deutsche definitely got caught up, and that had nothing whatsoever to do with cryptocurrency. So now they focus on this because they're worried that crypto is going to be used for money laundering, or maybe they're worried that it's going to be used to circumvent sanctions. Maybe it's going to help, maybe they're going to use it to circumvent Russia is going to use cryptocurrency to circumvent the sanctions. Oh, wait a minute. Germany and the US and a bunch of these other countries out there are still buying oil from Russia, and they're still moving the money via SWIFT. So, oh, wait a minute. Maybe those sanctions didn't work. Maybe they actually were irrelevant. So the EU, once again, look at this. So the EU underlines growing concerns. They have the growing concerns for money laundering and other illicit activities that might be used with, oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's right. Illicit activities and money laundering typically has been used for hundreds, if not thousands of years using precious metals and fiat currency and all that other great stuff. Another false narrative passed through by government officials. So they have a push to make crypto companies more accountable. They want to make companies more accountable for any of the assets that flow through their platform. So this is very problematic on many different levels because sometimes the transaction is being done through a mining environment or or a node or and somebody owns the node. So now that node owner and everybody's uh, KYC information has to be revealed in every one of these transactions, maybe multiple times. This is so crazy. Illicit flows in crypto assets move largely undetected across Europe and the world, which makes them an ideal instrument for ensuring anonymity. Let me think. Crypto assets. What about fiat assets? I do remember that sometime, I don't remember the year exactly, someone will throw it in there between 2008 and 2015, somewhere in that time, the US delivered on pallets, what was it, $1 billion in currency, in fiat to the Iranian regime. Now, that wasn't done through digital method. That wasn't done through traditional banking method. That wasn't done with cryptocurrency. That was done in cash money. So crazy stuff here. Illicit flows in crypto move largely undetected. This is the co-rapporteur for the EU's Committee on Economic Monetary Affairs. So let me think. So the EU, so this person, Ernest, that's involved here with the EU's Committee of Economic Monetary Affairs, what are they really concerned about? Is it more that cryptocurrency is going to become competitive with the regular financial institutions, or are they really concerned about helping the crypto industry move forward? Crypto industry leaders quickly denounced the EU vote as harmful to innovation and counterproductive, and they're 100% spot on because the EU is 100% spot off. They've lost their minds. They have lost their minds. So we go forward through this. This regulation harms crypto innovation without a commensurate anti-money laundering benefit. Cameron Winklevoss from the Winklevoss twins from Gemini. They say, you guys are out of your minds. You want to regulate and harm? Well, we got to think of what their ulterior motive is. What is the motivation of the EU? Who's paying their bills? Big institutions, big banks, maybe even Deutsche. Maybe Deutsche Bank is paying the bills of this EU representative. Very possible. Then you have Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong denounce a proposal in a tweet, calling it anti-innovation, anti-privacy, and anti-law enforcement. The company's chief policy officer, Fayyar Shirzad, warned that if you transact with or through a self-hosted wallet, every one of your transactions can be recorded and stored somewhere. And larger transactions will automatically be reported to authorities, even if there's no reason to suspect wrongdoing. There's a complete overreach of your freedoms, of your liberties, of your freedom of movement of money. It's out of control. On Thursday, the SEC issued a new recommendation that crypto exchanges record the digital assets of customers on their balance sheets as assets and liabilities. Can you imagine? I mean, now you're going to record customers' assets on the asset of an exchange as a liability. Crypto companies should also disclose the nature and amount of crypto assets that they're holding for customers. This is beyond rational because the same is not being requested of banks. They don't require banks to disclose exactly how much money they are holding on behalf of their customers. This is overzealous, overreaching, and bordering on communist dictate. Be careful. SEC Commissioner Esther Pierce, who's been critical of the regulator's stance on the crypto market, said the decision underscored the regulator's scattershot and inefficient approach to crypto. That's right, scattershot, inefficient, and destructive. So we got the EU making some crazy statements. We've got the SEC and the chair of the SEC from the basement in his enforcement protocols or pillars of enforcement being anti-freedom. Anti-freedom. It's outlandish. She argued the regulatory uncertainty over crypto, which prompted the accounting guidance, was largely the agency's own fault. Now, regulatory uncertainty. Again, we've hammered this over and over and over again. Since 2018, the Token Taxonomy Act has sat with Maxine Waters in the Financial Services Committee for 4 years. And the committee, the Financial Services Committee, has given it zero discussion. One of the best pieces of legislation to date that has been introduced in front of Congress is the Token Taxonomy Act, and it's got zero play, zero discussion in the Financial Services Committee because Maxine Waters cares more about her bottom line, as does Nancy Pelosi and the other of the cabal that are the representation in that government, in government. And so you have these individuals, and we saw Maxine Waters come out and she looked down on the homeless and she said, no, basically get them out of here. I don't want to hear from them. I don't want to know anything from them. Get them out of my sight because this is too much for me to bear because my policies are effective and working. And I care about the homeless, but not these homeless because they're in my way. They're disrupting my presentation. So the same thing then filters through the rest of the dictates here. And so we see the SEC that would not be in this position to dictate their insanity had Congress done their job and the government representatives done their job and discussed the bills that are in front of them, the very nature to support the people that put them there, that elected and have them as their representatives and vote them in every 2 years in Congress, go do their jobs. This is a major issue. So major crypto companies have recently unveiled initiatives aimed at improving the industry's KYC and AML practices, which is important. They need to have clear KYC and clear AML, but not the overreach that's being required from the EU or from the SEC here. Coinbase and Circle introduced a digital protocol that would enable companies to certify the identities of customers while allowing those customers to retain control. Really, no kidding. So we want to be able to verify the identity, which makes sense, right? Because even if you're going to log into your JP Morgan account or whatever, your Wells Fargo or whatever stock brokerage account you're using, doesn't matter. You have to have already proven who you are to do that. So going on an exchange, I get it. You still need to prove who you are. You have to verify your identity, your authenticity with that exchange. I get it. However, the individual should maintain control over their personal information. The government does not get to see what your investments are. They do not get to see, how much money you have in your bank account. They do not get to see I moved money from this bank account to that bank account. They don't get to see it. This is crazy. Obviously we're in this period also of an overreach of taxation where they want to tax you for unrealized gains. It's out of control. It's outlandish, right? So, man, that spend a little bit more time on that because it's crazy, right? So then we saw that the executive order was dropped not that long ago. That was basically meaningless. A meaningless executive order because executive orders are basically meaningless because they can be overwritten by the next administration that comes in. So they basically just get rid of the insanity. So we have this. It was a non-issue. It's a non-starter anyways. It's just a bunch of smoke and mirrors. They throw it in there and it's just nothing. So man, RBM though brings up a really good point though on blockchain because blockchain does track all of your movement. And so that's a really good point. RPM brings up a very, very, solid point on blockchain, because, and that's the danger here when we start transitioning into governments talking about central bank digital currencies or programmable money, or the government overreach and wanting to get more information from the exchanges, because the one thing that the governments understand is that they have an easier methodology through the digital transaction, whether it's cryptocurrency or a digital currency, of capturing their of capturing their taxation, of looking in on what people are doing. That's the danger of blockchain, right? So we all understand the danger there, that at some point, if you're collecting data on the person and connecting them to that address, and the exchange is now required to give it to the government, that the government now has every single move you make. This is why you can't have an overreach of an overzealous government. You have to be very, very cognizant of what's happening, which then pushes us back to maybe wanting to stay in fiat. Maybe we don't want to move over into cryptocurrency as a standard means of for our money, because it's then traceable, trackable, and then taxable, and that's very dangerous. And actually, in fact, one of the things that Canada's government did, and a statement out of the Canadian government about 2 or 3 years ago as to why they were looking at blockchain and crypto, they said it's a good way to monitor and collect taxes. That's a major statement, and you got to be very cognizant of trying to maintain your freedom of movement. And that's what these big exchanges are speaking out against. What happened in the EU, they're speaking out against what's going on with the SEC. And our government representatives need to represent the interest of our freedoms, whether it's the First Amendment, Second Amendment, or our financial freedoms, because an overreach of government to where they can then shut you down if you don't fit the narrative, if you don't fit the social norm from their perspective, if you say something that is contrary to what they want you to say, they then have a methodology. They have a way of shutting down your access to your funds, to your bank accounts. And we saw that happen up in Canada. It's crazy to think about it. It's conspiratorial, but it happened. We saw it firsthand. So very, very crazy. So now we get into, and this came just a couple days ago. Let me add it to the stream. But this is the Biden-Harris administration takes on digital asset regulation. Are they really taking on digital asset regulation, or are they imposing regulations? Imposing, right? Are they trying to create a framework of clarity that'll help people invest and help innovation thrive? Or are they trying to put their thumb, the big thumb of government, on the necks of those who are going to innovate and invest and try to squeeze every last drop of taxes out of the people? I'm going to go with the latter, because they're looking at this as a methodology to overtax and overregulate and overburden. They want to chase away innovation. They don't want to foster innovation. They want to chase it away. They like the way things are operating within the financial structure, how the flow and the movement of money to them. So we got to be very cognizant, again, of what's happening, whether it's the SEC or of an overreach of the executive order, or if it's an overreach by the EU or what have you. So here you have Biden's recent executive order outlines the administration's first take on regulating the digital asset industry, which includes crypto and NFT. The order lays out 6 policy objectives, calls on federal agencies to produce reports. That's it. Produce reports. So it was so meaningless, but really the biggest focus is going to fall down onto taxation. So that's what it really is about. And it does not foster innovation. It controls. And then you get at the end, they're worried about national security. They talk about financial inclusion. They talk about financial growth. They talk about the payment structure. They talk about CBDCs. So we have the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Treasury right, will report on payment systems. Now, we know the payment structures are broken. We know that there's issue. We know there's issue, right? So here now they want to get the Federal Reserve U.S. Attorney General will provide a policy recommendation, including potential regulatory and legislative actions, as well as proposals for the development and implementation of a U.S. CBDC. So it is crazy, right? This is the last thing that we want. We need to have individuals that are representatives in Congress that have put bills in front of Congress that are calling for regulatory clarity. We need them to be more outspoken. We need them to be more combative. We need individuals like Warren Davidson to speak up, even if Chris Larson, who has been behind Ripple, you're right, and understanding the narrative here, he has to be outspoken when they come out and they start attacking the space, whether it comes from a climate initiative or if it's coming from the controlling initiative, whether it's the EU, whether it's the SEC, or if it's an overreaching executive order. You see the narrative. You kind of see the theme that continues to unfold. So, all right, let us move on. Let's move on. This is really, interesting. It really is. So, what's up, Alchemist? Alchemist types some BS. RPM types some BS. No, I'm kidding. Kidding. But RPM actually did type. He did type BS. So, not kidding. All right. So, and this is interesting. So, Danny brings up a good comment here that we should discuss quickly. So, I read that Russia will be accepting Bitcoin from friendly countries who purchase gas from them. One day, Russia will be less socialist than the West. Now, this is very, very interesting, to see what's going on within Russia. There's conversation about them pegging the ruble to gold, 5,000 rubles to, what was it, a gram, an ounce, whatever it was, whatever the measurement of gold was. So we have that movement. We have the fact that they're producing oil on a larger scale. The ramp up of the cost of the barrel is enriching the OPEC nations, and we see what it's doing for Russia. And so it's very concerning. But then you see, yes, are they going to accept Bitcoin? Maybe. Are they going to accept? They want payment in rubles? Maybe. We'll see how the world works in that case. But maybe that's the possibility. So there you go. We have a dramatic shift in the direction, of the world right now. And we see, how the SEC has been far overreaching and overzealous, not just in policy, but in lawsuit, right? They've been running crazy on the lawsuit. They went crazy in their lawsuit, SEC v. Ripple. And they went crazy with their lawsuit, SEC v. Library, because here in 4 years of pursuit by the SEC, we've spent millions of dollars, provided millions of pages of documents, spent 10,000 plus man hours. Now think about the SEC brings them there because they say, oh, you're selling a security. But now in the meantime, 4 years of a lawsuit. 4 years, the SEC goes after them, millions of dollars, tens of thousands of man hours that could have been spent on innovation. That money could have been spent to help support users within the community. Maybe it could have helped fire people up that wanted to produce content for the library platform. Maybe, so the SEC instead has harmed a company and the supporters of that company, whether it's the digital asset, or the production and the community behind that company, which is library, that has, that are rolled out a really significant platform. So people that wanted to be part of that platform, people that were holding the asset library. So the SEC came in and crushed the aspirations and the freedoms and the goals of individuals, of retail, of people. That's what the SEC has done. So library says, we want to follow the law, but no one will tell us what it is. And you know why no one will tell library what the law is? Because the SEC doesn't know. And because government, Congress doesn't know. Why? Because Congress has sat on the Token Taxonomy Act, again, which was one of the best pieces of legislation that could have provided a framework. It could have provided a roadmap for regulatory clarity. But nope, 2022, we sit with no clarity. And we have an overreaching, overzealous SEC that does nothing. The SEC says to hire lawyers, which they did. We hire very expensive, accomplished lawyers, literally ex-SEC, and do what they say. The SEC says that it is wrong. We say, how can we fix that? They say, hire more lawyers. That's what's happened, right? Hire lawyers. Why? Because Gens, his focus is overreaching, overzealous, the pillars of enforcement, lawsuits that they may or may not win. It's crazy. That's it. I mean, it's outlandish. It's outlandish. Man, it gets to a point where you say, what is happening here? When are they going to stop? When are they going to, take us, just finally let people be, let retail grow, let innovation, let's foster innovation. Let's not burn it to the ground. Holy cow. So yesterday, the SEC says crypto platforms that hold customers' stashes must treat them as their own assets and liabilities. This is my money, not their money. So now, could you imagine, JP Morgan, you need to treat your customers' holdings in your bank as your assets, as your liabilities. No, these are my assets. They don't belong to the exchange. I didn't turn them over to the exchange. These are my assets that I hold in my wallet. They are custodying for it. They're protecting that asset for me, whether it's Coinbase or Bitrue or Binance or Gemini or whomever it is. The SEC doesn't get to tell the exchange that they need to hold that now as their asset and their liability. Who said that? How does the SEC make law? The SEC doesn't make law. The SEC follows the law. They can take the law and create some pathways and say, based on the law, this is why we're acting such. At what point did we elect representatives of the SEC that are appointed or hired? When did we elect them to write law? We never did. We never elected them to write law. This is out of control. Congress needs to hold them accountable for their overreach because we did not elect them. We did not elect the SEC. They don't have the power nor the authority to write law. The SEC said there are unique legal, regulatory, and tech risks that could have big impact on. Yeah, you know what the risk is? The SEC crushing them. That's what it's all about. And it's insane. So here we are, we gather, right? And we talk about this and we dissect it and we workshop it and we try to understand and we learn, from all of ourselves here as we're learning from this direction, and we start piecing the roadmap together of where people stand, right? We have the big platforms, we have big companies that are moving in a certain direction. Some of the big companies have adhered to a certain ideology that could be destructive and is detrimental to the expansion of the crypto space. Then we have certain powers that are elected into, government that are then, either doing or not doing. And those that aren't doing need to be removed. They need to be removed. So man, it's crazy, but I'm still very optimistic. Why? Because crypto is the future. And the reason why there's so many people against it within government and within, the SEC and elsewhere is because crypto has hit a nerve. Because if crypto was irrelevant, then nobody would speak up. You wouldn't have any executive orders. You wouldn't have them trying to force this into the infrastructure bill. You wouldn't have the EU voting on it. You wouldn't have all of these players trying to get their piece and trying to slow it down because they know that crypto is moving faster and faster and faster in a specific direction, and they are losing the narrative. They're losing their control. One of the things that Alex Mashinsky had told us, he's the CEO of Celsius. When he came for an interview, he said that the titans of tomorrow that come out of the ash heap of everything that we've seen are going to be different than the titans that have led for decades. The banking CEOs and all that banking cabal infrastructure is going to look drastically different as we move forward. Those are my thoughts for today. You guys are amazing. I look forward to seeing you guys back on our videos again. This is Jeff here on the chain. Chip and I appreciate all of you guys. We have by far the best and the brightest in the crypto space. You guys are unbelievable. Love your comments. Love your feedback. We'll check you guys out on the next one. I am out.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.